is Sean Sutton, I say good morning, Sean. Good morning.
Good morning, Robert.
How are you? How's everything going?
Oh, I mean, it's been last month hadn't been easy, losing my dad, but especially with kind of everything going on right now, not being able to really be around your players, and I'm back in Lubbock, obviously, and so it's unusual everything that's going on right now in terms of the virus, and not having access to really be around your players or do anything with them. And then on top of all that, losing my dad a little bit over a month ago wasn't easy for anybody in our family. But I do think, and I've told people this, that I think he was ready to go. He was ready to go see my mom in the last 3 or 4 years after he had his 3 strokes. Very difficult to see him have to live that way. So I know that he's in a lot better place and a lot happier back with my mom. So I guess that makes me and Scott and Steve and the rest of our family feel a lot better in terms of where he is right now.
Sean, I thought the same thing. You remember Aunt Billy and how close I was to
Yep.
her, and we lost her last May, and then lost my
Mm-hmm.
dad last November. And I was very involved in the caretaking for Billy. And
I
it's
mean,
funny, Lynn and I, my wife, we've talked about, Aunt Billy had that first stroke, and she really rebounded from that. She had another three really good years. But when she had the second stroke, that last year was not, I kind of try and block it out in my mind because it really wasn't Billy. And I kind of got the feeling being around your dad, the last, few times we saw him at Gallagher Iba at games, that it wasn't it was that's not the Eddie Sutton I'm going to remember. The one I'm going to remember is the one that comes off the bench and is yelling at Doug Gottlieb to do something right, and all those things, because I mean that's the Coach Sutton I always want to remember. And I'll tell you this too, one of the most fantastic funerals I've ever been to, uplifting, and just saw how many people were there that loved and cared about her, the former players at Arkansas, at Oklahoma State, was your mother's funeral in Tulsa, downtown Tulsa.
mm-hmm.
And the first thing I thought, Sean, when I heard, we were actually in Miami that night when we first heard your dad had passed, and I thought, you know what? He's back there with the love of his life, and I guarantee you, um, that was a great reunion.
No question. I mean, I know that. Well, first of all, like my mom just died so suddenly, and just had that stroke and never came out of it. And I don't think any of us were ready for that. I know he wasn't, and I don't think at that point that he'd ever even given one thought to the idea of living without her. And so, the 7 years after my mom's passing uh, were difficult for him. And then obviously the strokes came later, but he kind of got through some of that with my mother just because of the relationships he had with so many of his players, and close friends, and obviously our family and assistant coaches that worked for him and his coaching friends. And so he was able to talk on the phone almost every day to several people, and that kind of helped him kind of get through that transition. But I know it was a rough stretch on him, and tough living without her. So I'm sure it was a unbelievable celebration and reunion, and brings a smile to my face knowing how happy that made my dad.
No, no doubt, and yeah, that was the thing I smiled about, is that Eddie and Patsy are back together. Um, let's talk about this tonight. I helped Chris with some things from Channel 4 that I think he was able to use, and in the documentary, particularly some Mr. Iba stuff that I had discovered in the attic at Channel 4. There was some unbelievable stuff, but I haven't seen it, and I'm looking so for. I'm glad. I'm kind of glad I haven't seen it because it makes tonight. You know, it'll be in our den. It'll be like the premiere of a big movie. I mean, you know, and my last thing my wife and I said this morning when we both left, hey, we got a date tonight for Eddie, right? And the thing I've heard is there's a lot of people obviously in there that I know, but the overriding thing I've heard from people who have seen it say the the best stuff is about Eddie and Sean, and the best stuff is from Sean. And so, um, when you did the interviews, the first couple of times, I guess you saw it. Um, I'm wondering, was it hard on you, or was it? What was your reaction to your own involvement? I guess in the documentary.
Well, let me just say, Chris Hunt, Wendy Garrett, and Chad. I mean, those guys did an unbelievable job. And the amount of time they dedicated to this project, uh, talking about a 4-year period, and going back, getting all the footage, talking to all the different people. And so when Christopher Hunt came to us with this idea, we all agreed that, hey, if you're going to tell all the good things, you got to be willing to share, some of the bad and even some of the ugly, and that really made my dad who he was. And so I think people will see the film tonight and see somebody that hadn't lived an extraordinary life, but had a lot of some tough obstacles to overcome. He had some personal demons that he struggled with that certainly affected his relationship with his family, during that, 3 or 4 or 5 year period, whatever it was. But I felt like since my dad couldn't speak, that they wanted me to be the one to kind of go back, and since I was right there, really by his side through so many of these different circumstances that happened in his career and his life, share the story. So would I say it was easy? No, it wasn't easy to go back and relive some of the painful tragedies that occurred and some of the painful situations that went on in his lifetime. And, and don't get me wrong, there's unbelievable highlights, so many special memories. But, I think I did 3 sit-down interviews that lasted over 3 hours each one. And so you have to kind of go back and put yourself in those circumstances and those different situations you're talking about. And so, it was painful at times to relive some of those moments, emotional. And so I think people will see some of that tonight, but they'll get an accurate gauge of kind of my dad's life and his career. And he certainly lived a full life and had a great life, but also had some tough circumstances that some of it maybe out of his hands, some of it were, because of his choosing, and some of the poor choices he made in his life.
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, I feel so fortunate. I was at Channel 4 when your dad first came back to Oklahoma State. I remember being at the press conference. Um, that we had drawn straws in the Channel 4 sports office because Bob Senior, Bob Junior, and I all came to the press conference, and Bob said somebody's going to have to ask Coach Sutton about Kentucky and what went on there. And we drew straws. I got the short straw, and so here I am. I'm like, God, Bob, you're the boss. Shouldn't the boss ask the tough questions? And so I wasn't really, So here I am, and that's my first question to Coach Sutton. I think he forgave me, and I think
No,
I
sure he
remember
did.
tell.
He
Oh
always
yeah,
has.
yeah, I remember telling him the story later about how I drew the short straw. But the thing about your dad, my favorite, obviously Gallagher Iba Arena came alive with, and the reason it stands today the way it stands, that's the house that Eddie Sutton built. Um, but you know what? My favorite times were in Kansas City. I get the feeling he loved the conference tournament. I loved being there. That was the time, every once in a while after the players went to bed, every once in a while you and I were able to we snuck off a couple of times and hung out.
Yep.
But in fact, my favorite picture of your dad is cutting the nets down in Kansas City. Um, that Kansas City experience with Oklahoma State in the Big 12 tournament was so much fun.
Well, I think he'd be the first to tell you so much of his success of his career was due to the great fans of different places he coached, and probably, when you think about Barnhill Arena, you think about Rupp Arena, you think about Gallagher, the two places that meant the most to him, I think, in his career, and not taking away from Kentucky or Creighton or Southern Idaho or Tulsa Central, or Arkansas and Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State a little bit more than Arkansas because that's where he went to school. That's where he played. That's where my mother went to school. And so he had so much excitement when he got back to take that job after everything he'd gone through at Kentucky. Because kind of you got to remember, because this is what he's going to be remembered for. The NCAA investigation at Kentucky. And so Coach Hamilton taking the Miami job opened that door up. And so he always had such a thrill coming back there, especially being with Mr. Iba the first 3 or 4 years back, coaching Oklahoma State and seeing Gallagher Iba become, arguably the toughest place to play in college basketball. So those were always special moments too. But you're right. I mean, he loved coaching at the Big 8 and the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. And fortunate we had a lot of success up there. But that tournament always meant a lot to him. And, I said this in an interview with Myron Medcast the other day, like he's one of the last guys out there that you can kind of trace back his roots back to when college basketball took off in the late 40s and 50s, being recruited by 4 Hall of Fame coaches, Paul Gallen, Mr. Iba, Tex Winter, and Ralph Miller, and then playing against Wilt Chamberlain and coaching against Jordan and Bird and Fab Five and Spice Slam and Chandler. So he obviously had a great career, but he did. He loved his time in Kansas City. He always felt an obligation to get our team ready to play well and hopefully advance and have a chance to win the tournament.
Yeah, those were good times, and I remember what was it? Was it the second year that you went to the NCAA tournament? The tournament committee sent you to Lexington, and I
Yep.
remember going on that trip. That was an experience.
Well, I mean, it ended up becoming a distraction, and obviously that's not the reason we lost to the Fab Five. They just played a little bit better than us that day, but probably wasn't the best place to send his team in his second year. First year, we went to Baltimore and won 2 games, and then lost to Temple up in East Rutherford.
East Rutherford.
Corey Williams had moved his foot back 2 inches. We'd been Elite 8 playing North Carolina, and but he had a great shot, and they beat us in overtime. And then second year, we started off in Atlanta, won 2 games, and then ended up losing to the Fab Five in Lexington.
Yeah, it was that was an unbelievable. I remember walking through, that area, that kind of shopping area where you walk into Rupp Arena with the team and the looks on people's faces and all that. Um, the last thing I wanted to ask you too, and I think I told you this story. The first year when you went to the NCAA in Baltimore, I stayed back here. I didn't go, and I went and watched the game at Mr. Iba's house and mic'd him up. And it's one of the most amazing stories I've ever done because I'm in Mr. Iba's den. He's watching your dad coach Oklahoma State, and he'd start yelling at the TV. And about the time he'd yell at the TV for a defensive switch or something offensively, your dad would do it. It was amazing. 2 men thinking alike, thousands of miles apart, and I don't know if I'll ever see anything like that again the rest of my life. But those two, he really learned his lessons well from Mr. Iba.
There's no doubt. He said that throughout his whole career, that he had the best coach that he got to play for and the best man. And Mr. Iba, anybody that played for Mr. Iba, you got a real education on how to play the game the right way, but you also got a real education of how to be a man and how to go on and be successful in life. And so much of my dad's success in his career, he always gave Mr. Iva so much credit for things that he taught him, not only in the game of basketball, but just different things in life. And he got you ready to go out and be successful. And so that's something my dad always tried to pass on to his players, guys that played for him. But he'd be the first to tell you that so much of his career and success that he had was due to the fact that Mr. Iva played such an instrumental and important role in his life.
Couple of things with Sean Sutton before we let him go, away from the Eddie documentary, which will debut tonight on ESPN at 8 o'clock. Did you? I mean, you mentioned your dad coaching against Jordan. Did you watch The Last Dance, and what did you think of that that 10-part documentary?
I've seen almost all of it until the last. I haven't seen the last couple yet, and it's about the time because I had them recorded, and it's about the time my dad he passed away right towards the end. So I haven't seen the last couple yet. But it was interesting. You know, I enjoyed watching them. You know, it's funny that team almost broke up after the 4 championship, and they kept them together for 2 more years, and they ended up 6 championships instead of 4. But there was talk at the time about, you know, trading some of those guys to get more value out of them. But, you know, at that point in their career, if they waited a couple of years, they probably weren't going to be worth as much, and they're going to have to start all over. Anyway, Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause decided to roll the dice, and worked out well for them. You know, they won 2 more championships, but basically Tim Floyd got stuck starting all over with the team that wasn't nearly as talented as the group that had just left. So Coach Floyd and I had a long conversation about this, about an hour talk maybe 3 weeks ago. Talked about my dad, and we talked about some of the documentary and his time with the Bulls. And I thought it was well done. I thought ESPN did a good job.
And then the last thing, obviously, Sean, I've told you this many times how proud I am of you and what you've done, and now with Chris Beard, and I know Chris a little bit, and have always liked him and always knew he was going to be successful, and I know he's excited and has been to have you there, you know, helping him with that tech program. Really proud of what you guys have accomplished there in Lubbock with the Red Raiders, and then this year. When you guys came in and had the T-shirts, the shooting shirts, and Gallagher Iba, and saluting your dad, and asking the Hall of Fame to do the right thing, and just a classy organization with Chris and with you, and yeah, I just wanted to pass that along. It's whenever I turn on the Red Raiders, as long as they're not playing Oklahoma State, I'm all for the Red Raiders.
Well, I appreciate it, Robert. It's been fun 3 years. Chris and I have got a great relationship, been friends for almost 25 years, but he's somebody that loved my dad, and always appreciated how kind and how nice my dad was to him, Pat Knight, when they were assistants. And so, you know, that was his idea. You know, it was his idea to create those T-shirts, and he felt strongly about the fact that my dad should have already been in the Hall of Fame, and wanted to do his part, and said some great things in the press conference about my dad. But you know, he's a class guy, and really one of the best coaches in the country right now in college basketball.
No, you guys have done tremendous work. Are your guys coming back to campus anytime soon?
We have about half our players here now, but you know, you really can't do anything with them. So
right,
it's just, you know, such a unusual circumstance, but it was tough to have the Big 12. You know, we were getting ready to play Texas in the Big 12 tournament, and they came in and basically canceled the tournament 45 minutes before tip-off, and I thought Chris Beard, I thought he did an amazing job with our team through that whole period of cancellation of the Big 12 tournament to the next day, a canceled state tournament. Just reminding our players that there's just things more important in basketball, and this is the right decision. I know it's tough, but this is the right thing for safety purposes, and this is what we have to do. And so just hope there's college football season and hope there's college basketball season. But we'll see. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen yet.
Well, I'd be remiss.
As long as everything's
Congratulations.
safe.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate your son on his new coaching gig. In fact, Zach and I were talking about that a couple of weeks ago because Zach said, I still think he could have been a heck of a tight end because he was recruiting him to go play at NEO. And thought, man, this guy's got the skills. He could be a big time tight end. But he's now in the coach. And you know what? I can tell you this too. It makes it tough on mom and dad when son's coaching because I take the
Oh,
losses harder now with Zach coaching than I did when he played.
I bet. Yeah, I know. I mean, we're excited for Spencer. I think he'll do a great job, but not looking forward to when he gets beat. It's not going to be easy for his mom. It's not going to be easy on him. Not going to be easy for me to sit there and watch either. So
It's tough.
may have to call you to get some guidance on how to deal with that.
I don't know if I'm there yet. I'm still trying to work through it. Hey, Sean, best to you and Trina, your family, and like I said, your kids, and I know it's been a hard time, especially losing your dad, but we're going to celebrate him tonight. And like I said, I'm glad I haven't seen it because I'm so looking forward to it. And thanks for the time.
You bet, Robert. Great talking to you. You've been a good friend, and my dad always thought the world of you. So thanks a lot. Hope you enjoy the movie tonight.
Hey, I appreciate it, and I think the world of your family. Sean Sutton, everybody, and again.